At last, Minute Essays. Welcome to the first ever edition of Tidbits, the video equivalent of me gathering garbage from my desk and putting it in its place. And I don't know about your desk, but mine is a safety hazard. So it's good to get it done every now and then. But more seriously, this is a video collecting all ideas I had sorta written down when working out video topics, but I couldn't bring myself to write enough to fill out at least 10 minutes of screen time. So, instead, here they are as a collection in one video. Don't expect fully formed points, honestly, it's more like a series of ruminations that gathered around in my skull that did not fit the video proper or appeared after I uploaded the video already. So, think of it as a ripoff of Matthew Matos's Mega Micro Videos format, but with my voice instead. Spoiler warnings will show up for each topic if they are needed. And the first stop of an article is... With my latest video being on Vampire Bloodlines, I seriously pondered whether or not I should talk about the Ocean House Hotel at any length, to be honest. It's an early stage in the game and it is often described by people as one of the scariest levels in video games, but it legitimately did nothing for me. I think part of it was overexposure. Because the discussions and videos that interested me in the game already warned me about the stage, I was mentally prepared to expect horror, and that instantly made me see all the wires, so to speak. Oh, it's an early source engine game. Of course there is a level where they want to show off the physics by making a bunch of items fly at you. Then it just came down to identifying what these items are and dodging accordingly. A lot of people mentioned how, haha, you're a spooky vampire, but you can still feel fear, but honestly, I can sit in a corner and regenerate before I go forward and trip more flags that makes shit fly in my face. The elevator got me good the first time around, but that's about it. It's painfully obvious how the entire segment is a scripted set piece, and it instantly ruins the illusion of being attacked by ghosts. I'm just setting off a series of tripwire traps, and I'm condemned to trip them as the entire level is just an elaborate corridor taking you from point A to point B. Which brings me to a point about a lot of horror in games, honestly. Games are intrinsically a set of mechanisms, making it obvious how these mechanisms work, usually by overexposure, instantly nip any feeling of dread in the bud. It's why helplessness is extremely difficult to convey in games. If you just have to sit in a spot and wait for the spooky bitch to go somewhere else, you have more than enough time to think about how all the AI scripts work. Not to mention, I implicitly know the game has to be beatable because, well, it's a game. The equivalent of that in physical media would be dragging out the manual during a board game as you wait for your turn, or being stuck watching your fellow actor rehearse the same line 50 times before you can even utter a word. It's boring and oftentimes frustrating. Which is why horror is oftentimes done much better if there are, ironically, mechanics that allow you to not be fully helpless. I felt much more terrified by the lumbering zombies of the Resident Evil remake than by the invincible xenomorph in Alien Isolation. By giving me means to defend myself, the game implies I should be able to handle it, giving me the choice of how to best approach the situation. Do I want to shoot this zombo if I have no idea when I will be able to find more ammo? Should I try to kite it? Maybe I can just take the bite and leave the room that way. Will I be coming back this way? Pathologic 2 does pretty much the same thing. There is no feeling more gut-wrenching than realizing you are short on time to do all you need, wondering if you should just ignore the people in need to make sure you have enough food for tomorrow, as the prices will inevitably spike again. Sid Meier once said that a good game is a series of interesting decisions. By that merit, I think that a good horror game is a series of interesting, bad decisions that you nevertheless have to pick from. The biggest discernible feature of video games as art is their interactability, and I think having you sit and experience quite literally nothing is hamstringing that advantage to a much stronger degree than things like a linear narrative or cutscenes that people seem to rave on about a lot when talking about this. With these things, you are at least still playing a role, be it an actor acting out on his cues or that of the audience. There is no role-playing in the feeling of, come on, move faster, I've got places to be! Speaking of interesting decisions, man did the term role-playing game get fucking weird in the video game landscape. A lot of people bemoan how the term got mangled to mean character growth and skill trees and not self-expression through dialogue and such. And I get it, but I also feel it's barking up the wrong tree somewhat. A perfect representation of the freeform theater experience that is the tabletop role-playing is impossible in code, and that's fine. It has to be a complete product at release, and predicting every swerve a player might take is impossible. Even something like a pre-written adventure is not a perfect parallel, as the live experience still allows for taking the story in a direction not predicted by the original author. But my point is, the mechanical part of tabletop role-playing games is still an important component of it. Character creation and progression is a set of choices, and stripping that away to focus only on in-the-moment choices of gameplay is reductive. I play a wizard who ignores the physical world to focus on improving his understanding of the material. That's a choice that facilitates how I interact with the game, the decisions I make, and, probably most important of all, places limitations on what I can and can't do. Stripping the magic away drives me into a corner, as throwing a punch is not really a viable choice. When mechanics are present, becoming a jack-of-all-trades wish-fulfillment character is not feasible, and it forces the player to play into their strengths and try to avoid their weaknesses as much as possible. So, the main issue with character progression trees in most games is simple. They're fucking worthless as means of expression. Ooh, I deal 10% more damage now. Riveting. It does not alter the gameplay in a meaningful way, it does not say anything on how my character changed from the previous level to the current one. It hardly even alters what risks you can take, as most games are fine-tuned to never over or under challenge you anyway. It does nothing. But when done right, when these choices do inform your character's development, boy howdy does it feel fantastic. Going from dying to goblins to challenging God, and that progress feeling earned, fantastic, never gets old. And then there's titles like Disco Elysium, where your mechanical progression is a direct result of you getting your shit together and remembering more tools of the detective trade. And it can drive you right back into a meltdown-inducing overspecialization if you min-max. It's tied so seamlessly that you don't even need to think about it, but it's there, and stripping that game of the mechanical aspect would make it so much worse. One trap that people fall into is basing all their knowledge of RPGs on Dungeons & Dragons, a heroic fantasy system which mechanically portrays the path from a dude good at his job to a goddamn deity. But it's important to note that the mechanical progression can also point downwards. In a system like Don't Rest Your Head, there is no XP and leveling, only your character growing more tired and mad as they tap into the world of the insomnia-induced supernatural. There is no growing stronger, only, at best of times, collecting your ruined psyche a bit or getting a second wind to not crash down into cozy nap time as American McGee's finest assortment of weirdos tries to rip you to shreds. I won't get into mechanics too much, but know that the game is designed to make this a downward spiral. The more you depend on madness, the harder it is to crawl back out of it. The more tired you make yourself, adding more dice to your roll, the closer you fly to the risk of it all crashing down on you like a house of cards. It's a simple, beautiful system, and holy shit is running it difficult. And a very similar downward spiral is portrayed by, what else? Pathologic 2. And yes, Patho is a role-playing game, one where the GM hands you a pre-written character sheet, don't at me, but the fact that each death, which is pretty much inevitable, strips away Burak's maximum HP, portraying the wear and tear the plague has on both his body and psyche. Sure, you might have been able to take that bandit a week ago, but now? Nah, son, you literally don't have enough power to do this. Another pitfall very common to video games, especially in the past, is applying mechanics of inherently social games to single-player experiences. Specialization in something like D&D or Shadowrun drives cooperation and players relying on each other, which is not really a feeling you can replicate when it's only one person in front of a screen. And while the idea of a character that refuses to ever partake in combat is exciting and more than doable in a group, hardly any video game will allow for that. The designers did not slave over the combat systems for hours for you to just ignore them. So in general, systems that allow for a broad array of skills on a single character or ones that abstract them to a higher degree are better fitted to the blippity-bloopity versions of role-playing games. In fact, I would even dare to say that any game could benefit from a progression mechanic, just not like this. What do I care for 10% increase in damage? Let me pick up an interest in gardening so I can tell the NPCs how best to grow potatoes or something. Or hell, allow for negative skills that I can increase. Let me level up ruthlessness or conspiracy theory mind worms. So, in summary, please do not ignore the power of mechanical progression or regression when presenting your themes and story in a game. But also, holy shit, please stop phoning it in. Progression that does not reflect the character is meaningless. Since I already mentioned Disco Elysium, I want to backtrack onto it a bit and say, man, what a great game, not just in mechanical nuance but narrative one as well. There are a lot of narratives in fiction centered around the cop character, and somehow, uniquely, Disco Elysium manages to make itself stand out despite this wealth of peers. Yes, I am aware of The City and the City by Shaina Muville. I'm just really bad at actually reading books, okay? In broad strokes, narratives about policemen fall into two categories. Propaganda, where they are the just, wonderful civil servants that might have a vice or two but in general are saints compared to the big nasty world around them. Or the opposite of that, where every policeman is a pig barely fitting into a facsimile of a human skin, with a personality more rotten than any criminal they would ever hope to meet. So, between these two portrayals of police officers, what kind of cop is Harrier Dubois? Harrier Dubois is the ideal of a cop. That statement may feel silly considering a lot of things about the game, what state you find him in, what terrible decisions you can commit in the game, what deranged things you can and oftentimes have to say, but this is all because of a very simple caveat. Harry is an ideal cop, portrayed in a story that does not shy away from telling you exactly how damaging being perfect at such a job is. Harry is amazing at his job, as established by his track record. Hundreds of cases solved, only 3 people shot to death, promotion turned down twice to stay in the field. Even with his brain scrambled like eggs by alcohol and drugs, his instincts are so keen that he is able to almost supernaturally see all bits and pieces connecting to the case to the point where it might seem like the game's narrative bends itself backwards to make all his bullshit correct. He is the human can opener, not just because he can make the suspects open up and talk to him about what he needs to hear, but also because he can let vulnerable people come out of their tin shell, helping not just solve the case, but even establish that there is a case to begin with. The issue, however, is what being a detective entails. And it is not the high-stakes mysteries of a mysterious murder with dozens of actors and surprising twists like the main plots of the game. That case is, as a lot of people repeat, highly unusual and one-in-a-million event. What the work actually entails is spelled out by the Dick Mullen novel, seeing people at the lowest point in their lives, day after day after day. The Copotypes present in the game are coping mechanisms. You either fully buy into propaganda as a superstar, declare all your work pointless as Apocalypse Cop, undermine your own authority and ability to do anything as the Sorry Cop, or just disenfranchise yourself from any attachment as a boring motherfucker, boiling working down with people at their lowest to numbers and ticked boxes. The game even mercilessly makes a typical day at the job a side quest. A dead body is found on a boardwalk and somebody needs to identify next of kin to inform them. There is no mystery, no heroism, nothing. The Copotypes won't help you. All those 4 ways of coping with it are ill-fitted to this genuine human tragedy. They'll just make the entire experience even worse. All you can do is grit your teeth and tell a poor woman her entire world has just crumbled. Day after day after day. Disco Elysium is very ambivalent about policing. Your case notes detail some of Harry's colleagues being horrible people. You can outright say your job is to keep the shit exactly as terrible as it is. You have no power over the members of the occupation government that gracefully lets the Revachol Citizens Militia act as the enforcers of its laws. But at the same time, the militia was formed due to the will of the people. There always needs to be someone telling bad news to widows and finding the truth behind murders, or getting kids off speed. But at what cost? both to the officers themselves and everyone around them. And if a perfect detective like Harrier can get broken by it, and those less empathetic and emotional don't do their job for the betterment of the people, what is there to say about everyone else? Well, they probably should get tanks as part of their budget. I think we can all agree on that. What is the worst way of establishing stakes in fiction? Threatening the end of the world, of course. It's not that it guarantees the success of the heroes. There are series where the end of the world does come, just look at narratives like Shin Megami Tensei 1 or Devilman. But even there, the end of the world feels like a footnote to everything else. The issue with Apocalypse is that it's impersonal. While sure, things I care about are part of the whole world category, the villain sure doesn't care as much as I do about these things. Somebody coming in to piss in my sink would get my blood boiling. The entire city being leveled is something I just have to stop or deal with little emotions involved. Getting personal about something that impacts so like a million other people feels selfish. Which is probably why one of the worst villains in my recent memory was Akio Otori from Utena. And it's not even because of all the despicable stuff he did. Not to downplay statutory rape, general domestic abuse and emotional manipulation, but, you know, I'm old, I've seen and heard some shit. But it's this one single small scene towards the end that just evaporated my blood into crimson steam, where after all the pain he caused, after everything Utena and especially Anti had to go through, when his plan fails, he just discards the broken sword and essentially says, next time I guess. He's not angry. He's not sad, he's not gloating, having some realization about himself, he's not even confused. He just didn't care. He caused all this misery for a goal he ultimately treated like an amusing pastime. Oh man, they cancelled my favorite show's episode because of production issues this week, I guess I'll watch something else. It's such a little thing, but it generally makes him worse than fucking Griffith in my eyes. He doesn't kill any characters I grew to love, he does not threaten to end the world, he doesn't even maliciously gloat about how much hurt he's caused to the protagonists, and it's a chillingly good portrayal of an abuser, something that doesn't happen often in media. He might have talked about great things and how he does it all out of love, but in the end, it was all just a fun distraction for him, and he's ready to just discard those he hurt and move on to new toys without a second thought. God, I fucking hate him so much. Such a great villain. It is my utmost belief, without a shred of irony, that every work of fiction has its own language. Well, a language might be overstepping it a bit. Its own dialect and intonation, more like. Every work talks to you in a different way, and I think if your goal is dialogue with it, it takes some willingness to not brush those traits off. You are welcome to say that the core of someone's argument is stupid, but to say that all the words have no meaning because of the choice of tone and vocabulary is, well, a bit assholish, isn't it? Personally, I try to convey at least some of that unique tone of the work in each of my videos. Of course, there is something lost in translation every time. My voice is just as unique, and presenting the game, or anime, or anything else through my words is inevitably going to alter it. But I think trying to alter the work in general to fit my brand, whatever the hell that would be, is disrespectful. And far worse than that, it's also boring. Maybe it's because I don't have the raw charisma needed to put the creations of others under my banner. But even if I did, it doesn't feel right. Of course, finding a way to convey the same energy and tone can be difficult. For example, I really want to make a video on Hotline Miami, but I can't get my hands on cocaine reliably, so that's off the table for now. As an example of another creator that does this perfectly, Miracle of Sound is a channel that does songs about video games. And Gav started doing mostly metal/hard rock songs because that was his style, but it was only when he started experimenting with other styles that, in my opinion, his art became truly phenomenal. A 6-part song describing the core of every character in Divinity Original Sin 2, haiku lyrics in a track about Ghosts of Tsushima, the solemn "I can't recall a thing, so why do I feel so sad" in his opus on Disco Elysium. Fucking phenomenal, incredible, stuff of legends, give it a Emmy. So it really peeves me off when I hear arguments like, "Wow, this is so weird," or "Ugh, who talks like that?" Clearly, that guy talks like that. If every work tried to aim for the same things, the cultural landscape would be nothing but NFT shit-stain avatars ever since Michelangelo's times. And if you're not interested in engaging with the work on its terms, why did you purchase it to begin with? There's probably no victim of this attitude greater than Edge. Oh, it has a dark palette. How edgy. Oh, the characters are sad. I can't stand that edgy shit. And so on and so forth. On some level, I do understand it. There are a lot of commercial works that go full style over substance and just decide to look gross or violent without much behind it. The 90s comic books were rife with this attitude, and it bled over to cinema and games over time as well. Not to mention all the edgy remakes of stuff aimed at kids, as the core audience of those works grew up enough to be embarrassed of liking them, but not matured enough to stop giving a shit about the target audience of what they like. But honestly, doing the opposite, using squeaky clean aesthetics without any meaningful messaging behind it, feels just as bad, if not worse, because it's not cool. But at the same time, there is a real appeal to edge, to blood, viscera, dark nights, themes of pain and futility, black and red clothes, or supernatural powers of the shadow. The aesthetic entertains that underlying thought that there is more to life than clear-cut victories of good over evil, or that there is value and worth to our worst moments and lowest instincts. It's good to look up to an idealized figure and try to live up to that ideal, but it's just as good to accept the less than admirable parts of ourselves and the allure of them. And it doesn't always have to be played for horror. It can just as well embrace those parts of us, draw strength from them, and be empowering. It's what makes one a complete person. Or at least I'd like to think so. Or maybe I never outgrew my years of listening to Marilyn Manson. There is this notion I've heard repeated a lot. In visual design, you need the silhouette to stand out. Like all advice, it's overly generalizing, while still containing a kernel of truth. Of course, it's absolutely necessary for your characters to be distinguishable from each other, and there are methods of expression that can convey that without the involvement of colors and patterns, posture, accessories, size, etc. The issue arrives when you want to create a purely human cast without relying on over-exaggerated proportions. And let me tell you, I have been playing the great Ace Attorney Chronicles recently, and that series does an impeccable job with that. 10 games in, if you count the Edgeworth spin-off, pirated by the second game, it's so good! And the series never stopped with amazing character designs. In a series of murder mysteries, first impressions are key. You need to know what to expect from each suspect, but it's equally as important for some of them to throw you off your game. At the same time, everyone needs to be unique and memorable. It's not really a good mystery if you forgot all about Suspect 5 because he looks like an Oblivion preset character. The series is particularly good at giving everyone a unique set of expressions that make their personalities shine, both in 2D sprite work and using 3D models and the depth of motion it allows for. I wasn't particularly warm on the idea of using 3D models after I got used to the very expressive sprites, but now that I've seen Junosuke and Sholmes dance around the room, deducing things, yeah, banger choice, please do it more. Ace Attorney is not a realistic series by any stretch of the word. It's cartoony as hell, and it allows the characters a certain degree of squash and stretch. But at the same time, it's a lot of human characters, and there's only so much you can do without varying heights and accessories before you turn every suspect into a Final Fantasy team member. So, all the little touches matter. This guy being a busy worker and having stripes on his back, making him look like a bee, brilliant. The prosecutor slamming his foot on the stand, breaking away from the long tradition of characters banging on the wood with their hands, portraying what a drama queen he is under a veneer of stoicism and aloofness, amazing. This guy spending so much of his life in the cold that his entire existence is shivers, outstanding. What I'm getting to, I think, is that while a strong outline is good at making a character stand out, motion is just as strong of a medium, if not more so. A strong silhouette is good if you create in a static medium like, say, manga, from which I'm pretty sure that advice originates. But hyper-focusing on that aspect of design can rob you of other ways of expressing the character. I don't really have much to say here. I just wanted to jam Great Ace Attorney somewhere, because the second game in that duology is the best game in the entire series. All the exaggerated movements and gestures do not undermine the seriousness of their character arcs when they need to be serious, and they all stand out as unique people, both from each other and from the vast history of the series. If you have a direct line of contact with Capcom, please tell them that they need to give Nuri Kazuya and his team like 20 Christmas bonuses right now, one for each year of work on the series. I can't even make one character design as iconic as what these games are flooded with. Are you kidding me? And that's the end of the first installment of Tidbits, clearing out my video backlog of all those loose ideas I've had. Next month, we're talking about a novel, a visual novel, because I'm a child that cannot focus on text without pictures. This video was made possible thanks to the support of my amazing Patreon supporters. Look at them, look at how cool they are. If you like my work, please consider joining them to give me an ego boost, or just share the video and interact with it. It's just as valued. The bigger the numbers, the more reasons I have to entertain every single dumb idea for a video I have in my head, sooner or later.